I think for the new people here, I don't think I introduced myself. My name is Calvin Behringer. This is the time when I just have a wonderful honor of introducing the person that's behind of all of this. This lady has been phenomenal in boosting everything that's going on and keeping us all on track. And she's got a couple of comments, and then she's got some special information she wants to give out to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Carolyn Solomon. Good job.
Thank you. Good evening all and welcome. And again, our apologies for the little technical glitches. But I think afterwards, Colonel White will explain, and I think we'll all be very happy with what's happening. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Lieutenant Colonel Roy White. He's an Air Force veteran of Desert Storm and Operation Southern Watch. He calls High Country of Texas home and is a commercial airline pilot. He has been involved with nearly a dozen military nonprofit organizations since 2006, helping wounded warriors and their families. He was president and chairman of Snowball Express, and that organization brings children of military fallen heroes together each year for a 5-day all-expense-paid gathering of healing. For over a year, he led a group of citizens, Truth in Texas Textbooks, TTT, in the review of social studies textbooks that were reviewed by the Texas State Board of Education this past November. TTT's work resulted in discovering over 1,500 errors in 32 social studies textbooks, and it culminated with correcting many of the factual errors in these books in November 14. Many of these errors relate to a pro-Islamic, anti-Christian, anti-Western agenda from many of the textbook publishers, from sponsoring a $1,000 award contest for high school students about the topic of Sharia law in the U.S. Constitution, to uncovering the recruiting of young airmen to convert to Islam through mandatory Islamic cultural training at Lackland Air Force Base. The San Antonio chapter, of which Colonel White is a chapter leader, is meeting the mission of Act for America, as we do here in Montana, of educating and informing citizens on the tenets of Islamic ideology and the threat it represents to our freedoms of religion, speech, way of life, culture, and national security. And some people here locally think that we should be labeled a hate group because of what we are doing. I don't know about you, but I think that this is, in me, a thing that we all believe in and that is worth fighting for. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Colonel Roy White.
What a treat to be here in Montana. I have some roots here, sort of, I'd like to say, because my wife's family has a ranch over on the other side of Seeley Lake that we've had connections there. They've been there for over 100 years, and my children, my mother-in-law, who's 93, worked over here as a wrangler. My kids have done that. My wife has done that. When I retire in 2.5 years, I will be the town boy over there because I want to come back to Montana. So I am just an honor to be here tonight. And before I forget, I want to do a couple things. First of all, my business card is on the back here on the table. It has some websites on the back that I would highly recommend for folks to go and look and review if you want to know about Islam, various aspects of it. This is the one that I would recommend picking up. There are 2 DVDs in the back. This one on Brigitte Gabriel. It's an interview. Back here, it's only $5. This one is a book on the Gulen School movement. You may or may not have Gulen schools here in Montana yet, but you will. There are over 150 of these. This is a gentleman, a Turkish billionaire who was very good friends with Erdogan until they had a splitting apart, but he lives in Pennsylvania, and 150 schools are receiving $500 million worth of federal money and grants for charter schools, in which basically it's an influence operation for indoctrinating children. So, happy news. Anyway, a little bit about me. I have a family of 5 grandkids. I grew up in North Carolina, and I was a kindergarten school teacher. That's what I was doing when I started. And I had the opportunity to go into the Air Force and was very blessed by that. And 20 years after I went in 1979, I got out, and I suspected I was just going to be an airline pilot once I got hired by my current employer. My son, after we moved from North Carolina, which was where I'd grown up, where my last assignment was, I was flying 810s, we moved to Texas, and we had been there about 90 days. And in those 90 days, it had gotten to 100 degrees every freaking day. And my son comes to me after this and says, "Dad, you've moved us to hell." I said, "Well, it's really called Flower Mound. I don't think they really want you to call it hell." But fortunately, it has not been that hot there this summer or most of the summers for the last 15 years I've lived there. But still, Texas is home. But if I had to call another state home, it would be Montana. So I'm just very honored to be here with you tonight. I want to start off with some good news. We are working a technical challenge here. This challenge is to bring 2 people just like you, but who could not come here tonight, or all around the country, and bring these types of events live to people across the web. So this equipment that's here tonight is my gift to you for your 2nd year birthday. The camera, the sound equipment, and all of this is to help this chapter and others continue to spread the word. Because you know there are many people who couldn't be here tonight. There are people that are too far away to drive. They don't want to drive home at night, but they can watch from the convenience of their home and watch this. And so we will be talking more about that and giving you more information, but this is the first chapter. That's what happens when you get to be chapter leader or the chapter of the year. So happy birthday. But we're glad to be able to do that and present this to Caroline and all of the folks here as our way of saying thank you for the great work that you're doing. Caroline talked about the national conference, and I want to tell you just a brief story about some great news that occurred out of it. And it illustrates what 1 or 2 people can do. There was a minister, Pastor Gary Hammer from Houston, Texas, just south of there in Deer Park. He came to the event because they had been witnessing 2 young Muslim refugee youth who were in the local community there, and they were going out and talking to them and trying to bring the word of Christ to them and educate them. But they were seeing things that just didn't make any sense to them. The landlord owner was saying, you know, these women are being abused. We don't understand what's going on. And so they threatened the men, the Muslim men, saying, if you continue to do this, we're going to call the authorities. And they looked at them like they were 2-headed monsters. Why would you be calling the authorities, and why would they object to us hitting our wives? And so this kind of inconsistency in normal laws, they came to our conference. And I gave them a book in which talks about how to talk about Islam, how to not talk about from a Christian perspective, but what's the truth about Islam, what's the issues. He came back to me within just a matter of hours, late at night, saying, wow, this book has opened my eyes. I had no idea Muhammad was this, and Quran says that, and all this other information. They went back to their church Sunday. The senior minister who was with them said, I'm going to talk about 911, but I'm going to integrate this discussion about what we learned that we saw from the briefers at Act for America. So he did that, and the teaser at the end of the Sunday morning service was, you come back tonight and you'll get to hear more and much more detail about that. Well, like most churches, Baptist churches, on a Sunday night, you probably get about a quarter of what you normally get. They normally get about 85 people. They had 200 and 400 at the second service in the morning, and they were expecting maybe 100, 150. He said, Gary, I had him on my radio show 2 days ago, he said it was like Easter on steroids in the parking lot. There was no way to park anybody, and the fire marshal would have shut us down if we had seen how many we had, over 468 in the building. So that message can be done every Sunday. If ministers were willing to stand up and say the truth, which is what we are, we're truth tellers, those ministers get it. And they change those people. He said he had 3 standing ovations in the middle of a Baptist sermon. And I'm Baptist. I grew up Baptist, and they don't usually stand up and do anything. certainly not give you a stand. He had 3 of those, and then I asked him, how many of you ever had in your life? I've never had any. I got 3 in one sermon. I'm going to do it again next week. That's the power of the truth. That's the power of simply saying what we're talking about tonight. Not about hating anyone, not about doing, and they're still going back to witness to the refugee youth because they need it. But this is an issue that affects us all. It is and certainly the ones that we're talking about now, our children are the most precious commodity we have. So, we're going to talk about, turn on the clicker, there we go. How 50 volunteers, just about this side of the room here, how 50 people changed what 5 million children are going to study for the next 10 years. And if you count how many states buy the books that Texas has, you're talking about a number that's closer to 20 to 30 million. That is something you don't mind having on your headstone. And I'm very honored to represent those volunteers who did that. And I'm here tonight to hopefully get more volunteers, because Montana, as we talked about today, is in the middle of beginning the process of a public display and a public review of the current text or the textbooks that they're considering. And it's not too late, and we're going to marshal the forces that we've already trained to help Montana. So we need for you to help pay us back by helping other states, and we'll talk about how we're going to do that. Now, real quickly, Act for America, you're familiar with the organizations. You've had Brigitte come here, so I won't bore you with all these other things, but you know her story as a Lebanese Christian woman who lived in a bomb shelter from age 10 to 17. She started Act for America to make sure that what happened in Lebanon does not happen here. And her focus were these areas: empowering women, protecting children. That's one of the things that we're focusing on. Islam means submission, and in the textbooks that we've seen, we clearly saw they are attempting to teach our children about the soft side of Islam and not the factual side about Islam. And so we were there to do something about it. But and I'm honored to be a part of her team, as is Caroline and many, many others, and you are a part of that team now. So we need for you to continue to spread that word. Keep hitting the wrong. There you go. This is a brief, how we got to this point, a brief history lesson on how this people, how did this all start? I'm not going to take you back to the Mayflower, but I'm going to take you back a couple of years. I'll give you some information you'll find useful. 50 volunteers, and what you can do to help now our project, Truth in Textbooks. So we want to continue to do that. So, who knows what zakat means? Anybody know what zakat means? Not you. Anybody else know what zakat means?
Charity.
What?
Charity.
Charity. It is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. There are things about Islam that I wish Christians would take up. Praying 5 times a day, that wouldn't be a bad thing. You know, mandatory charity. I mean, very mandatory. You know, it demands that, and zakat is part of that. But zakat, you giving 2.5% of your yearly worth, you give that, and part of that money goes 2 out of the 8 areas that it goes to are related to jihad. Supporting widows and children of those who have blown themselves up. Oh, by the way, that's how they get the money to pay the widows or the widowers, and now because women are going off, or the mothers and fathers. And then the other way they use that money is to go out and fund specific jihadist attacks, because jihad promotes Islam. And it's right back there in the Reliance of the Traveler, back there in the book that Caroline and them have here. So it started when 1975, when Saudi Arabia said, we've got a problem, Houston. We've got a problem because people think of Islam in ways that we don't want them to think. We want them to think of it as softer, easier, gentler, and how do we change that perspective? So they went to the Stanford Research Institute, and what's it take? Money, $6.4 million to go to the Stanford Research Institute to say, we need for you to give us a business plan. How do we change the American and Western, particularly the American perspective, in education about Islam? And how do you do that? You get into the education system. You've got to go in the schools. Well, they were not in the schools. I grew up, I graduated from college in '76. We didn't talk that much about Islam. It was just about the world history. But you began to see things change, and they came up with this plan. 5-year plan, focus on these things. Bring over Middle East doctoral discussions, or candidates, students, Come to our colleges and universities. Come here to the United States and do exactly that. And come and begin to work on your dissertations. Stay here and produce master's and doctoral theses, because what are textbooks made of? Research, doctoral thesis. Let's change the history. The second thing they did, they sponsored Middle East Studies Department. In 1975, there were none. Now there are close to 70 Middle East Studies Department around the country, in which Middle East countries, Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, all sponsor chairs in those universities. Well, if you're a university president and someone comes in and says, I got $10 million to give you, sir, and we're going to pay for the professor, we're going to even build you a building. Most college provosts are going to say, sure, come on in, we'll do that. But guess who's going to decide what's going to be taught in? It's not going to be the provost, it's not going to be some review project. They're going to assume that these colleges of these countries are giving a fair and equal access. Well, they don't. They're influence operations. So sure enough, they began to build those, and the first one was there in Stanford. So there's this, and along with this, you have to keep in mind that you've heard about the Muslim Student Associations. They started here in 1963. You're going to see a high school Muslim Student Association later on. There are many of those, but now we have more Muslim student associations in the country than we have young Republican, young Democrat clubs. And why is that a concern? Because they are tied to the Muslim Brotherhood. And they are not exactly our friends. So, here again, the last step, establish think tanks. Let's take the content that these doctoral students are producing from these Middle East Studies departments, and let's now have a third party go out and market it to the publishers to say, hey, we think this is some really good stuff. We want you to produce this material, and here, we're the think tanks, we'll help you find the right information, because there's this whole new discussion of multiculturalism in the 80s. Let's present this, all cultures are the same. So this would, and where did it start out? California. What a shock. It wasn't Alabama, it wasn't here, but it was in California, because they knew they were ripe for that. So sure enough, that's what happened. Well, then you have the jihad with a pen, because jihad comes in all forms. Zakat, where you give money to those who will do it. If you write about it, if you write about Islam in a way that's positive to deceive others, then you are performing jihad by the pen. And these were the different topics. Holocaust began to be changed. The terms was spread, and you could use Holocaust for anything, as well as even questioning the very existence if the Holocaust occurred. You had the delegitimization of Israel. If Israel would just go away, there would be no violence. There would be no terrorism. They're the thorn in everybody's side. They don't really own that ground. Why do they have the Palestinians under oppression? Why did they take that land? Oh, by the way, they were being attacked, and usually winners get to keep what they win. What's wrong with that? So, lots of other misinformation. Jewish lobby versus the Arab lobby. Oh, the Jewish lobby, they're the bad guys. They're the guys who are pumping all the money into the media. They're the folks, but the Arab lobby, oh, they're the oppressed guys, even though they've got tons of money, plenty of oil that we've paid them for. So really it's the Arab lobby that's doing the right thing, because we're trying to help the oppressed. The Jewish lobby, they're just a bunch of money-grubbing Jews that are out there. So that narrative got written into the dissertations. And then all of these areas began to be a part of the narrative. And when you write something in a research book and you get the university to stamp it as final research, you know where it goes. It goes to those think tanks, and they walk it right over to Pearson, Houghton Mifflin, and all the other ones and say, hey, we've got some new information. Let's take out some of the content that you've got in there and let's put in this new content, because this is more accurate. We always know there's more accurate information later on when history comes along. Well, that was not the case. So, the publishers, Saudi led the way, Gulf and Arab states began to follow them. They weren't stupid. They could see how this was paying off for them. And these organizations, these were the think tanks that were part of the problem. And the last one, right there, the Council on Islamic Education, started by Shabir Mansouri, and he was identified in the 2008 Holy Land Foundation trials being tied to the Muslim Brotherhood. So, and he affected 37 of the 50 state textbooks. His influence in that organization. And when they got found out about it, they changed their name to the Institute of Religious and Cultural Values. Oh, what a shock. Yeah. So, again, typical tactic of what they do, but the publishers began to take with it, began to run with it, and over the course of time, began to change that narrative. And because books only get reviewed about every 8 to 10 years, you just need to be there. And we've had about 3 cycles since, usually because they were on about that cycle. So we're now seeing the 3rd generation of how much they've omitted and replaced with other information. We'll get into some of those samples tonight. So, I started the ACT chapter in San Antonio in 2013. I wasn't there but for about just a couple months. And they began to ask me, will you stand up an organization to review the textbooks? I can tell you, my teachers right now are rolling around in their grave thinking I'm up here talking about textbooks. Because if there was anyone who didn't look at a friggin' textbook in school, it was me. So that should give you great comfort that you can review social studies textbooks. So we had a great team of folks who looked a lot like you, and most of them did not have letters behind their names and were not ex-teachers. So end of the day, you can do this. Now, I started all this. I got involved with Act for America for a couple simple reasons. You heard my bio about Snowball Express. Anybody here heard of Snowball Express? Snowball Express is the charity that brings children of military fallen heroes together once a year for an all-expense-paid gathering, 5 days, 4 nights. It started out in California. The very first year we had 897 brought out, and these are kids who had never met any other kids just like themselves. And last year, in its 10th year, we had over 1,600 that were flown out to Dallas, Texas. And some of these kids were 10 years older, some had aged out. But in 2009, when I left Snowball Express, I looked out in a room that had 1,000 kids in it. And if you want to have something that just rips your heart and think that they're never going to see their mother or their father again, and that they gave their life as a price of freedom, that on the worst day of their lives, the last thing a country ever gave them was a flag. And since then, nothing else has happened, except for Snowball Express in 2006. But I would stand in that room and think to myself, when these children get old enough, and they look, and they begin to look at the history, and see where their mother or father died, and they realize that the first paragraph in the Constitution of Iraq and Afghanistan say Sharia is the law of the land. And that we as American government officials worked with those governments to put that in their Constitution. Why would we, as a country, send their mother or father off to die in a battle in which Sharia is the end result? So, my oath said to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I looked around for 3.5 years of studying Islam on my own, and that's when I found Brigitte Gabriel. And she told me more in an hour in her briefing than I got in every single tactical briefing or cultural briefing I ever received on Islam in my 20 years in the Air Force. That made me angry, made me just so frustrated that I then just began to study the operational manuals. And that's why I'm here tonight, is because of Snowball Express and those kids, and because I have an oath. And so I appreciate all of you who have served. I appreciate all of you who have children who are serving. But it's for them that we do what we do, and our grandkids and our kids. So in 2013, we began to form this group, and this lady, Dr. Amy Jo Baker, had been in the business of social studies textbooks for 40 years as a curriculum director in San Antonio. So she said, let's put this team together. I worked with her. We went out and found experts, subject matter experts like Dr. Sandra Alfonsi. And that was our mission, was to go out and find the errors in the textbooks, not replace the opinions that were disguised as facts with our opinions, but to really make sure that the factual errors, the imbalance of materials, the omission of facts, all of those things we were going to address. And not just about Islam. And we weren't going in as Act for America. We went in as Truth in Texas textbooks. That's a tactical decision. And it was one that worked out rather well for us. So we went ahead and we began to put up a plan, and our plan was to go ahead and focus on these topics and many more. We got Sandra Alfonsi, Neil Fry, who had been doing this for 40 years. He lives out in Longview, Texas, lives over the top of a grocery store and an old musty library, and with a pencil neck tie that he comes to work with every single day. And his wife is there all dressed to the nines at about 70 years of age. And he told me, well, Mr. White, when you're all said and done, you'll get about 2 or 3 changes per book. Oh, well, thanks for the good news. Thanks, sir. Then we'll just pick up our marbles and go home. So that was a little challenging, but we were not operating under the rules of 40 years ago. We wanted to use the technology that we had, and that's what we decided to do. So we put together, devised a training plan. Military, you got to have a training plan. You got to have a training plan to go about doing this. So we proceeded to do that, and we enlisted volunteers to review the social studies textbooks. We put the word out everywhere, and we began to recruit folks. We began to get them trained during that period of time, and then we proceeded to go to the State Board of Education and advocate and tell them this is what we need to do. And so all of that timeline was, and we're at the point right now where they're in the public review section here in Montana. We just looked online today. Come January, the State Board of Education here in Montana will make recommendations after public comment that may be occurring literally as we're speaking right now, but we're going to find that out after tonight, and get more information and give it to you. And we are going to take our team of trained volunteers that we already have, and we're going to focus some of them out here in Montana to give you a hand on that. So we're excited about doing that, and we're asking you later on to help also, and we'll tell you why. So we then sent all the information out to the public school board because, I don't have one of my sheets here, but we have a report card. We reversed engineered it. If you're a parent, you're a concerned teacher, you go to a local school board and you say, I don't want this book, and they say, well, what do you know? You know, what makes you so smart? Well, we had to give them a simple one page, front and back, that would say, hey, we want, this is what the textbook is, color-coded, good, poor, acceptable, or unacceptable, and we want, thanks. In this color code, we just simply made it a simple grade sheet so they could go in and then pull out the full page report. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. And what were the results? 37 social studies textbooks, like Caroline said. We were able to post those, a 469-page report from our 50 volunteers, and we proceeded to just hammer the hell out of them at the State Board of Education. The president, well, one of the members of the State Board of Education, a Rhino, asked me, he said, well, Mr. White, what makes you qualified to be, to be a reviewer? What makes you qualified to be, standing before us today and critiquing these textbooks? Well, I said, I'm a high school graduate, I'm a fighter pilot, and I'm a Rotarian, and my mother breastfed me. And I said, none of that really friggin' matters. You just need to look at the mistakes we've pointed out to you. When these gray-haired ladies come up here in just a few minutes and read for you page and paragraph, and those are errors in the textbooks because we show you where the facts are, you just need to friggin' change it, mister. You don't need to ask me what my background is. My 6-year-old grandson goes out to the car and tells me, hey, Hammer, that's what he calls me, Hammer, you got a flat tire. I don't need a $300 an hour mechanic to tell me I got a flat tire. We're not talking quantum physics. We're talking high school, middle school, and elementary social studies. And if any of that scares you, then you probably may not want to be hanging around sharp objects tonight. Because that should not scare you to go out and review social studies textbooks, high school, middle school, and elementary school. I think most of y'all are elementary graduates. So you're fully qualified. And now our reviewers were just like that. And that's what they did. So we captured those errors and got 60%, not the 2 per book, but 60% of those 1,500 errors we got corrected. We got some of the publishers voted off the island. We got some of them so embarrassed, we created a top 10 list. I was with someone, Sandra Alfonsi's been doing this for 25 years. She says, don't expect any letters or any kind of contact with the publishers. They will not discuss any of this with you. I had publishers calling me up every freaking day saying, how do we get off your crap list? Because we put out a David Letterman top 10 every day. We gave it to the State Board of Education and said, hey, you're the worst ones. I said, you're the CEO of a company. How do you think you get off and fix it? How tough is that? Ding, ding, ding. You got a winner. So let's go ahead and fix the textbooks. And that's what they started to do, and that's why we got 60% fixed, when in fact, before we weren't, people were telling us don't expect too much. So, and for the first time ever, anybody here a lawyer? You're not ashamed to say it? Come on. Ex-lawyer. There's no lawyers in the crowd? Come on. Okay. But any lawyer, and I don't play one on TV, but we'll tell you, when you go to discovery and you have a deposition, and you can get the other side to say what their positions are, that's very powerful. We got the publishers to rebut some of our comments. You think we're going to use those the next time we go out to critique these books again? You betcha we are. And we'll know exactly what to do. So we want to do it again and again and again. We're not going to stop until we become the ANSI's list of social studies textbooks. People, school board members, others will come and look for us and say, boy, these books, you got these red over here, you got these blues over here, I want to go with the blue and the green books. And then the presidents will walk down the hall to sales and say, why aren't we selling anything? Because this TNT group is saying our books stink. Well, if you want your jobs, you're going to need to change what we're putting in the books so people will buy them. It's not that tough. So you have the power of the purse if you'll go to your local school boards and tell them, we don't want to buy these books, we want to buy these books. So it's up to you. It's not Roy White's going to make this happen. It's going to be you acting for America and doing something about it. So, and that's why we'll need some of y'all here soon. So the process, we split the teams up into 4-person teams. We split up the book in half. 2 people review one half of the book, 2 people review the other half of the book. Those 2 people would write their own review, and then they would compare notes. They would look at it, critique, and say, hey, this was good, you didn't document this properly, this was okay. And then the other half, we'd put them all together, make sure that we didn't leave something out, and then we would submit that book to the reviewers. We did the training, we put you through training, we give you about 2 months, I jumped ahead, 2 months of training when you sign up. We'll have classes that start, and we gave everyone that training. And we put them through the training, and then we did a mock review. You can't hit a 90 mile an hour fastball if you haven't been in a batting cage to see an 80 mile an hour. So we did mock reviews and practiced them. And then the review started in May, and we got them all worked out. We compiled them, did the review. The reviewers were Dr. Sandra Alfonsi, the subject matter experts, looked at the comments from everybody else, and then proceeded to, her name appeared on before the State Board of Education. Our reviewers were protected, and we're never going to be harassed by reporters saying, well, why did you say this from Denton, Texas, or from wherever? Our reviewers, they don't know who the reviewers are. And we have reviewers, some of you from Montana have signed up. I haven't met most of my reviewers because it's all done online training. And that's a good thing. So, we rated the books good, acceptable, poor, unacceptable. Pretty easy. I wanted to use something for number 4, but they wouldn't let me because we work in the public domain. But that's the report card. That's what we gave to each of the State Board of Education, and I had parents from around the state calling me up because we sent out 12,000 emails. Hey, am I reading this right? Where do I go and find the report? Yes, you go online, pull out the 4 report, give it to your local school board, and show them the errors on the page of the paragraph that our reviewers will look at. And that was very powerful. So, these were some of the errors. Non-Islamic errors, but these were just some of the typical ones. How many of you think we live in a democracy? I'm afraid to share. Well, I can tell you, all those publishers thought we lived in a democracy. And they were trying to tell our kids we live in a democracy. Sorry, we don't. And we had to continue to fight that fight. Climate change. I was interviewed by Al Jazeera. Well, you critique some of the books about climate change. I said, well, you know, when you only tell one side of the story that any fossil fuel burning is kind of a bad deal, that's kind of telling what, well, 97% of the science, oh, well, wait a minute, are you a reporter or are you a climatologist? Because last time you told me you were a reporter. So before you start telling me that, I can pull out another group of scientists that will tell the other. All we're asking is let the classroom be a place that learning occurs. Present both sides of the story. What harm is that? Well, we don't want them to think that there's another side. Oh, okay, thanks for telling me. And can you say that in the microphone? So, That was their story. And so what did they do for climate change? They said, well, we'll just take it out. Well, there's a mature attitude. Thanks for, the teachers lose a great opportunity for a teaching moment. Now they'll put it in the science books and they'll only tell one side of it, so that's another story for folks to worry about there. Oh, and Gorbachev? Yeah, we all know he was the one who brought down the wall. Reagan? Oh, he just woke up one day and the wall was down. Very little recognition of Reagan and the contributions. And everybody knows MacArthur was a racist because it said that in the textbooks until we kind of pointed out to him, where'd you get that from? Or military leaders. And when you talk about World War II, they talk about the Japanese internment camps and they talk about the dropping of the bomb, but they don't talk about all the heroic leaders, men on Battle of Bulge, D-Day, many of those other issues that, or any of the wars, quite frankly. Removable, and so this is a removal of content and replacement of other content. That's really the most serious problem we found is that Buzz Aldrin, we don't need to talk about landing on the moon because that would promote American exceptionalism, and we can't have that because we're not exceptional. We're just like everybody else. That's the theme we were getting continuously throughout the books. So, everyone knows Louis Rukeyser, for those who remember watching Wall Street Week, he would always say, Great Depression, of course it was caused by unequal wealth. No, not hardly. But that's what they wanted the students to know. And we looked at the teacher's edition. The teacher's edition, and if I had known this as a student, I'm telling you, I would have done much better in school. I didn't know that's where all the answers were, but I rode in a short yellow school bus to school, so I was when we would look at the questions that the teachers would be asking them, they were asking them agenda-leading, bias type of questions to get them to come to a conclusion that they wanted the students to have, not to have open discussion, and to look at these things. And we pointed that out to them continuously throughout this process. So, online mentors, imagine if you got an 11-year-old grandson or daughter, and they come home, hey, Mom, Dad, I've got a mentor online. Oh, really? What's their name? Oh, Bob. Where's Bob from? Oh, he's from a prison. No, we didn't know where he's from. We didn't know where these folks were coming from, but one of the publishers, we thought that was a good idea. The snap in the room of all the State Board of Education's necks toward that guy saying, what were you thinking? It was like a crack of a tree falling in the forest. They were just wondering, what? So again, our reviewers found that type of stuff. It would have been in the textbooks, and it would have been online. And because we looked at online books also. Describing the Constitution as a living, growing document, it's exactly what the left wants you to believe. So we can change it at a whim. So, we talked about the teacher's edition and all kinds of areas in the legislative, judicial role and oversight. So, we found those in the areas. Now we're looking at the Islamic issues. Take a look real closely. It's easy to get depressed about, climate change. Why would you be telling a student, it's easy to get depressed? Why would you write that opinion for them to begin to feel depressed while in a classroom? As if students don't need enough things. But now it's climate change. Picture a mosque. Now, pictures tell 1,000 words to a student. And they were only showing pictures oftentimes wherever there was a religious theme, it was always an Islamic theme. There's Christian churches in these countries, but didn't show that. And Hindus and Buddhists forget about it. You had no hope, little or none, to get any kind of exposure. Experts try to predict when the United States will use up all of its own oil. You all know that in 2020, Texas will be dried out, no oil whatsoever. We're all going to be driving around in buggies. This is a book that was going to be published in 2015. It's ludicrous. Have you looked at your kids' books lately? You can't get them because they don't come home to you. Having told today about here in this school district, an ex-teacher going to knock on the door and talking to the superintendent, and they looked at her like she was a terrorist trying to break into the school. What do you mean you want to look at the textbooks? Why shouldn't you, as a taxpaying citizen, be able to see the textbooks that your students, your potential employees, the people are going to be protecting you later on? Why wouldn't you want to look at those textbooks and see what they're being taught? But they're afraid to show you what's in the textbook because they know. Some may not know. And we find many supervisors and superintendents who are amazed at this kind of content. So, world culture. Islam didn't come to Africa like it just sprang up naturally. It got there with the power of the sword. But it's the little verbiage, the little words that they use to describe. When you're talking about the West, crusades were a bad deal. It doesn't talk about all the things that had happened for the 400 years prior to that. Kind of might have made a few Christians upset. Don't talk about that. Let's just talk about the Christians coming in out of the blue. And here, again, military conquest in northern Africa. Christians were the predominant religion in northern Africa. But they don't talk about that. Expansion of Muslim rule through trade. Well, that sounds, and sure there was some growth through trade because merchants decide if I want to be a successful merchant, I need to be a Muslim. But that right there demands a lot more than 2 words. And that's all they were given until we blew the whistle on it. So, the Ottomans. Talk about the Ottoman Empire, how great it was. Just happened to omit this little term here. These were young boys, 8 to 10 years of age, who were taken from their Christian parents, turned into soldiers, and were sent other parts of the world to fight under Islamic rule, all part under the Islamic Sharia doctrine. So, again, we tried to bring up to them, and we had some of the experts, well, why are you focusing on Islam? Why are you picking on Islam? Well, first of all, we didn't write the books. Second of all, we didn't have a limit or a quota on how many complaints we could make about a topic. So if you think there's too much criticism about Islam, then there's probably too much Islam in the book. Duh. How about figuring that out, Mr. Publisher? So again, our point was we were just observers and readers and reviewers, not replacing our opinions or our biases, because we threw out about 20% of the critiques that our reviewers had. Not every critique made it in. And we had multiple eyes on a textbook. The liberal professors who came and said, well, this is my opinion, this is that opinion. I said, did anybody else look at it? And most of them, it was just a single-man operation. So we had some self-selection that was going on, no doubt. But I think we had a good process. Sharia law requires extended religious freedoms to everyone, tolerance, Christians and Jews. Tell that to the Coptic Christians. Today or then. Tell that to many other Christians and Jews, or Hindus in India. You know, Buddhists or in China. They've all been oppressed. Not because they were all, tolerant of those religions, because they were intolerant. And it doesn't mean Christianity, those who are killing in the name of Christ, that needs to be talked about too. But let's talk about this. That's all we're asking. And that's what we told the publishers to do. This is another good one. Displayed impressive leadership skills. He fashioned an agreement that joined his own people with the Arabs and Jews of Medina as a single community. Muhammad may have displayed impressive leadership skills, but the remainder of this paragraph, and it would go on and be very flowery about Islam. And make it sound like, it was just, the best thing going. And we just wanted to be a bit more objective and include, again, the omission of facts. Taqiyya, kitma, is the aspect of not telling the full truth or telling a half-truth. Well, the publishers were doing this. They've submitted to the Islamic influence of Shabir Mansouri and these other groups who have written new dissertations, who have, back in the 80s, put all that information, and these think tanks began to pump that into the publishers, and they want it easy. They don't go out and make it hard, so, hey, you got some new material, let's put it in there. And oh, by the way, there's money involved. $140 million from the Saudi government to pump money into here building mosques and building these kind of institutions. So of course, they're going to be influenced, and they clearly were. So, out of this process, we were so successful, we said we need to take this nationwide. And we need to energize people around the country. Not do it in each 50 states like we originally thought. I like my current wife and my original wife, and she wants to keep me. And when someone suggested we need to do this in every state, I objected to that because I wanted to stay married to her. But traveling around and building a cadre of 300 to 500 people around the country who will be like ready reserve, on alert, standing by to help, that's what we were looking for. And so we began to train people. We started training in January, in April, in July, and now we've got a class starting in a couple of weeks in October. And we'll have a class starting in January. And we're doing the training just like we did in Texas. So we want to continue to do that. Each reviewer sits alert. Once we get them trained, we just have, give us 6 weeks of the year, not where you're just waiting by the phone. We can't wait. You know, you've got your life to live. We understand that. But tell us 6 weeks and where you'll be available to read, not recreationally, but for our purposes, what we need you for. Now, as we're starting out, we're asking people to do double duty, and a lot of folks are stepping up and doing that, and we appreciate that. And life gets in the way sometimes. So if you start the training, you can't finish it, we'll put you in another class. We don't put it in your permanent record, so you're okay. But we do ask you to try to complete the training. And then, if we can get these number of reviewers, then we'll have 7 to 12 review teams ready at any one time. We have calls. I had a call today from Kentucky while we were working on here. We need help in Kentucky. And we'll show you the states that we're working in and what we need. We want to become the depository of these reviews and begin to give a place. Because right now, you try to do a review for your kids or your grandkids' social study textbook, you're going to get a zillion hits. You go to Truth in Textbooks, you're going to see the reviews from those books that we reviewed. And then, as we continue to add to that, and there's not an unlimited number of books out there, believe it or not, they just recycle a lot of these books. So we'll continue to focus on these and make that work. And the next class starts in October, as I mentioned. So we need your help. Apply lessons learned, that's what our goal is. Get the reviews out there and continue on. Now, what are we doing in Texas? We're still helping the State Board of Education in other areas. In the other states, we've got listed up here. North Carolina, we're going to start the review process here in another couple of weeks. So we'll be running that simultaneously with Montana, if we can find the resources, and I think we can. California, we will be going in California, and they're the largest purchaser of textbooks, and they haven't had a review. They have not had new textbooks in quite a few years. And we are going to help them and attack their process and their textbooks in a way that they're not really prepared for. And that's okay. We've got people on the ground there who will go and advocate. And that's what we'll ask of you, is when we've done these reviews here in Montana, we will ask you to go to the State Board of Education. Not me, because I'm from Texas. We need you to go and read the script and be some of the folks that advocate and say, here are the books, here are the errors, submit the report, and hopefully the state will take those inputs. So, we'll be conducting reviews in New York and also in Minnesota and Montana, like I talked about. We've had requests, and now Kentucky and other states. So this is not something that's going to get fixed tomorrow. A lot of you will take your cars in tomorrow, this week, and get them fixed. That's a quick fix. This is not a quick fix. But nothing that has the kind of impact like this can be done overnight. It takes patience, it takes a plan, and I think we have a plan, and Act for America Education is going to be a part of that. So, I want to show this quick video. And we're just about done. This was a school up in New England, and you'll see it here.
Today we're here at Vernon Hills High School with the Muslim Student Association, and we are participating in an event called Long Island Hijab, and that's basically giving the lady students at Vernon Hills High School an opportunity to try wearing a hijab for the day and just experience what it's like, and also to denounce negative stereotypes and show that we are just caring, respectful, peaceful students and your peers. This is our first big event, and hopefully it'll bring more members, Muslim and non-Muslims, to our event, and this should help make Vernon Hills High School a more safe and respectful environment.
A safe and more respectful. For those who've studied anything about Saul Alinsky, communist 40s and 50s and the influence operations that they've attempted. The communists would have loved to have been as effective as the Islamists have been in influencing the culture. The disadvantage the Soviets had, communism, is they didn't have a religion. They had that religion, and they are using it. The Muslim Student Association high school chapter was sponsoring this. And what young girl is not going to want to wear a scarf around her head and look very cool? It's cool to be Islamic. And so they rally around them, not knowing that that's a Sharia-compliant dress. That allows a woman in Islam to have more good deeds for her benefit because she is applying Sharia law. Those young girls have no clue about what they're saying and what they're doing because no one's told them the truth. Are they to be blamed? No, their parents come home and think, oh, that's a great homework assignment. But it's more than that. So, Islam in the classroom, we need grants and funding. We are trying to raise money with Act for America Education to fund Dr. Sandra Alfonsi because those are folks who are really performing a lot of work. I don't get paid for this. None of the other volunteers do. So if you know educational nonprofits looking for places that are really making a difference, I think we are doing that. So that's who we are. If you want to be a volunteer, there are some brochures in the back that explain the program in more detail. Please pick up one of those. That's my email address, TNT, like the explosion, at actforamerica.org. So please write to us and let me hear from you, a phone number or email. And that is my presentation. So,
So we'll get into some question and answers here. We had several mics, only 2 of them are working, so instead of running around trying to get them all to you, so those that have questions for Roy, we're going to have a wireless mic back here, so Jared will have it. So make your way back there if you would be so kind.
and I'll repeat the question so those who are watching online, let me turn off the screen so I don't go completely blind. Okay, anybody have questions?
I got a couple of things.
You got a couple more. Good.
Settle down there, aircraft jockey. Everybody, here's your last chance to get a ticket. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was.
Oh, hold on, we're gonna wait. We're gonna do questions in a minute. Last chance. Anybody else want a ticket? Nobody wants to go flying? You want a ticket? This lady wants. Can I get a ticket up here for this young lady? For the aircraft.
Airplane?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, you wanted 5. You wanted 5? All right. Last chance. Last chance. Anybody else?
Jack wants. We ran there.
Oh,
You can't look.
oh, I can't look.
You might know somebody in here.
Okay.
Jack wants one. Hold on a second. Put it back. Well, we're bringing you a ticket. Hold on.
Bring me a ticket, okay.
Don't grab the one that's
My
stuck on
hands
the
are
side.
clean. No tickets. No tickets.
Well, we're going to do a couple questions here about that. Carolyn's going to talk to you.
Sorry. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Thompson again for allowing us to raffle off this wonderful And then once we have the winner, you'll have this plastic little thing that Cal has. And on here is the name, phone number, and email of the wonderful pilot, Mr. Steve Bakke. I will give him the name of the winner, and then it's up to you to contact him. And this is valid for Ray for 1 year. Is that correct?
As long as we need.
Well,
But you should do it before the weather turns bad.
yeah, if you cannot do it, then it would be next year, I think. So preferably this fall.
Unless you have that big heavy jacket.
Right? Okay, are we ready?
Are we ready?
Well, let's take a question.
Do a question. Who's got a question? Yes, ma'am.
My one question is, I recently went to a board meeting, school board meeting, and maybe it wasn't the right school board meeting, it was for District 5, and they looked at you, I was the only one in there, there was nobody had showed up
Yeah.
from the public, and they looked at me like I was really a bug that didn't get killed in the extermination they just had or something. Staring at me, and I proposed to them what my concern is as a mom and a grandma. Our education system, I want the truth
Right.
in textbooks, and Islam is becoming much more predominant, and I'm wondering if you as educators are really watching the curriculum of what these kids are what you're sending to them to read, and blah, blah, blah. It was short, it was good, I
Right.
thought. And they stared at me, it was a quiet, like they were shocked, and just said, thanks, and then they went on to the next subject.
Exactly.
That was it, they just dismissed it. But my thing is, we do legislation, we do Act for America, God bless them. Is there something more we can be doing, such as?
Now, here's what, to address your statement and your question. Yes, there's a lot. It is, first of all, one person going in there is difficult. You have a room full of folks, and when they give you 2 minutes, which is usually what they give you, you can have your questions or your statements all lined up. You can have a 10-minute discussion if you've got 5 people there to do that. Now, you didn't have that advantage, but you've got a lot of friends in this room now who should be coming to you, and I've talked to Caroline already about some of the questions you need to be asking them at the local school board. And there are a series of questions you can do. And you also have elected school board members. These are people who get elected, and when they come up for election, they need to be challenged. Whether you videotape it, whether you record it, when you find out what books that they're buying, if I was running for local school board, I would find out what the books they recommended to buy, and then go through and research that, and then print that out as my campaign. This is the books, and this is the content that your person that is running for school board is wanting to put upon our children. So those are some practical things, and going to PTOs, going to the PTA meetings, letting the parent-teachers organization know about it. I mean, those are real things that, you know, are not going to get, you know, bugged out and fixed tonight, but those are some practical steps. So I don't want to take up too much, but go ahead. If you
There are
got
too
another
many
question.
PTA meetings, PTO, they're more fundraising events.
I understand that, but that's where you just have to put your foot down and call a spade a spade. Okay, and now I'm drawing for the winning, and please nobody be mad at me. Ah, Roy White. No, sorry.
Oh, you want my glasses?
Oh. Someone,
Hold on.
I do fly with glasses, so I'm just not wearing them.
Diane Harrison.
Yeah, go with that.
Diane Harrison.
Diane Harrison.
Where's she at?
Okay.
Were you just clapping? Well, she's not here.
Is she in the back? Okay, she's not here, but she's a winner. Winner, chicken dinner, and an air flight. So there you go.
Want the bag?
Okay, yes ma'am, your question.
Yes, thank you for being here. And my question, I have 2 questions.
Sure.
They're kind of linked. Are you doing anything with regard to Catholic schools and colleges?
No to both of those, because our focus has been public schools and not at the advanced placement, because the advanced placement U.S. history test is another whole bag of, you know, trash that a lot of people are writing about, and we're aware of that. We're also not a Common Core state. I know your state is Common Core, just accepted that. But our focus was, if we, and this can help the Catholic, if we would just put truth back in the textbooks, we could fix Common Core, at least from a social studies standpoint. So we don't get into that Common Core debate because everyone wants to get us off and say, label us as this or that, or you hate this, or your favorite. No, we just want, who's against truth in the textbooks? Raise your hand. We get that kind of response. Oh, put your hand up. It's a trick question. Anyway, yes, sir.
Yeah, I got a question.
Thanks for your
So
question.
even if you change the textbooks, given the ideological persuasion of most government school teachers, right? Can't they just override that and preach what they believe in anyway?
There is some truth to what you're saying. A lot of teachers are just given the material to teach. They don't think about the content because they believe that the people above them have given them the proper content. Many times when we brought this to the attention of teachers, They were shocked. We were looking at some material from the Missoula, or from the Montana schools here in Flathead, or was it in Bigford? And Caroline and their education committee has been pressuring them, and they had this 20 pages of Islamic discussions and hardly anything about Christianity, and you're even kind of suspect about what they covered with that. So those teachers are only oftentimes just teaching whatever they've been given and what the state has told them they're allowed to. But supplemental material, there's no doubt we need to be asking, what are the other materials? And in this case, it was supplemental material, I believe, but we're not sure, because the superintendent's been a little reluctant to share that information as if it was, nuclear secrets or something. So, but there can be potentially that, and you're going to get pushback. But that doesn't mean you stop trying. So,
Thanks.
yeah. Yes, question.
Yes, there's 120 Gulen charter schools in the United States and 36 Harmony schools in Texas.
Yes. Sad to say.
Yeah. Could you just comment on your efforts on that?
Kind of stinks. Gulen schools. Fethullah Gulen is a Turkish billionaire who was very good friends for years and years with the current Prime Minister Erdogan in Turkey. They had a falling out. Well, but before they fell out, Gulen came here to the United States in Pennsylvania and has a compound. His goal with the money he wanted to have was to begin to build schools around the country, basically Islamic schools, but under the guise of STEM, science, technology, math, and put those in locations around the country where oftentimes the schools are underperforming. And as a charter school, under the guise of charter schools, these schools would open up and they would have a curriculum focused on science and technology, called not Gulen schools, but Harmony schools, and they have some other names. And how did they fund it? Through your tax dollars, $500 million, because charter schools get funds. Not all charter schools are on the up and up. Like anything else, it can be used to, in a bad way. In this case, Gulen schools began to hire and bring over on H-1B visas from Turkey, mostly male Turkish men, to come here and be teachers here at these schools. As if we have a shortage of teachers here in the United States, particularly science and technology. And they would come into school with a particular culture, a particular view, and teach, yes, some of the science and math, but in the course of all this, these parents who were now going to have an opportunity to go to a, quote, charter school that is focused on science and technology, and they're in places where their schools are poorly performing, what would you do? It's a perfect opportunity of taking advantage of people who have parents who have kids who are in schools underperforming. So they begin to flow there. Well, those teachers, when they come over here, they must kick back a portion of their money back to Gulen. The construction companies that do this are all Turkish companies, or mostly Muslim countries. There's no fair bidding going on. And the schools that they recommend them to go to, they say they have a 100% graduation rate, and they go on 100%. They go on to college. Why? Because there's a college and university, Gulen University in Houston, Texas. If you're a graduate of a Gulen school, you're automatically admitted there. So they can make that statement without any hesitation, without being called on. But they are teaching a soft version of Islam to these students who then go on to college and go on to continue to work. And that's a problem. Imagine if the Soviets came over here in the 40s or the 30s and said, oh, we want to set up some schools for you. Yeah. We won't call them communist schools, but some of them in the New England area were probably like that. But let's just bring over people from Russia. Those are just the professors. So that's what Gulen schools have been doing and how they're working around the country. And you may not have it here. Yes.
I just want to remind you, in case you forgot, last year, April, we had a Turkish Day in the Capitol building, remember? And they were advertising Gulen schools.
So, and we have them in Texas because oftentimes they'll take parents or teachers, and it's not just the Gulen schools who have been doing it. Ismaili sect, which is a Shia sect, Aga Khan IV is really good friends with Rick Perry, our former governor. Well, they met at a social event, and Rick Perry says, hey, we need to learn more about Pakistan. this is where they were located. So they brought in a curriculum and trained about 350 teachers, and we had about 75,000 students in Texas that were exposed to this soft Islam under Rick Perry's rule and saying, hey, we were exposed until we looked at the syllabus and some of the same kind of errors and more gross than what we found in that. And when that got exposed, it got shut down. So then what did they do? They said, hey, you're a teacher in high school, you're a teacher in the middle school, we're going to bring you to Pakistan. We're going to give you a free trip during the summer. Come on over. And guess what? We're going to show you all about the great things that are going on in Pakistan and with the Ismaili sect and Islam. And so when they come back to those schools, guess who's now the expert? Guess who stands up and gives the briefing at the first teacher's seminar? It's not going to be me. It's going to be someone who just came back from Pakistan. Are they going to be telling the truth about Islam? No, they're not. They're going to give them the version that they just gave them. It's an influence operation. It's as simple as that. And it's happening with our schools, and the Gulen School is that example. So apologize for dragging it all out, but that was kind of... And that's what Mark Hall, who did this documentary, did a great job of that. And it's a great piece to be able to give the legislators, local school board members, if you ever hear Gulen, boom, don't go there, and this is why. Yes, sir.
One of the problems with the school boards are they are mostly elected, they are paid for by the school teachers union. The teachers union I wouldn't trust in Montana as far as I can throw them. But one more thing. Should Islam be protected under the First Amendment?
It's a good question. To me, and we had a Muslim who came and spoke at the ACT National Conference, Raheel Raza. She put out a video that talks about numbers, and the numbers of how many Muslims who are out there, when you look at the surveys, how many have responded in a way that support jihad either directly or indirectly. And it's in the multi-millions. It's not a small number. Now, Raheel Raza believes that she's a Muslim practicing a peaceful religion. And for me to tell her that she can't do that because she's a force within the Islamic, because the reformation somewhat internally needs to occur, but I'm not going to sit here and say that, she shouldn't be allowed to practice what she thinks Islam is. But there clearly needs to be a review of our policies and what it says that we can't go into mosques. The FBI needs to be able to go into mosques. They need to be able to go wherever the threat is. That is clearly in Yes, follow up.
Muslim is not a religion. It is theocracy.
I don't disagree.
Part religion, part government.
I don't disagree with it. We're not at a place in our country yet where we can convince people of saying that. I agree with you, but we are not at that place yet. And we can't be until we have an honest debate about what Islam is, and that's what ACT is. And we have to understand that there are those who are on the fence we have to bring to that fence. You can't hit them over the head and say, we're going to, kill Muslims or we're going to go out, because that's not, the greatest abuser of Muslims are other Muslims. The greatest abuser of Muslims are other Muslims. It's a human rights issue. And I have Muslim friends who I have no fear of. But I will tell you a brief story, and I'll take your question right after this. One of the things I do on my overnights when I fly is I go and visit mosques. Now, I do take drug tests for the FAA, so I am clear drug-free. So it's not exactly the craziest thing to go out and visit mosques. But when I went to Las Vegas, I stopped at the mosque and talked to Hyatt, who was a 57-year-old Moroccan man who ended up coming here to America and has been very prosperous. And as we sat in the shade and we talked about Islam, and he talked about how great it was and how great America was and how he loved America. And then he said, and America is more Islamic than my home country, Morocco. So I said, okay, well, let's go with that one. So let's see so you think Sharia law will be here in the next 30 or 40 years? Oh, and he waved his hand. No, it's too political. But I mean, without hesitation, he looked at me dead in the eye and he said, but in 300 years, yes. That's their view of the world. Hyatt is no more going to strap on a bomb and go blow somebody else up than the man in the moon. But he is practicing jihad right then and there because he's that peaceful Muslim that people can point to and say, well, Islam's not bad. Look at Hyatt. He's a nice guy. He's successful. Because he said, I've been here in America. I asked him, why do you think it's more Islamic than my home country? He says, I go back to Morocco. There's corruption, there's poverty, there's violence. That's not Islam. I'm here in America. I've received so many blessings from Allah. This has been great. We're talking peacefully. I mean, you can understand why his point of view might be, this is going to be, like paradise. We just need to, in 300 years, make sure all you guys are submitted to Islam. Well, that's a problem for me, and for my kids and my grandkids. But that's what ideology means, and that's what we have to be aware of. But we're having a discussion, which is great. Go ahead, sir, your question.
If someone in this audience can get the title of a social studies book from their kids or grandkids, is it easy to cross-check with what you've done to see if that's been...
Ding, 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 ding. Again, winner, winner, chicken dinner. That's all you got to do is go to our website, Truth in Texas Textbooks. You can look. We have the ISBN number on the textbooks we've looked at. You can go and review those and see very quickly. And if it's not the exact book, it's probably going to be pretty close to that. But we can help, and that's the review. But looking at the books they have right now is kind of like, all history. We need to be looking at what they're about to come out with. Yes, sir.
Hello. I was just wondering if you could provide some of the verses from the Quran that mandate the wearing of the hijab and
the hadiths say.
Can you quote the hadith for me?
No, I can't quote the hadiths, but I'll be happy at the end of that go back to the Reliance of the Traveler and show you, where Muhammad talks about making, part of being Sharia compliant is for women to wear the full hijab, and that's part of being a good Muslim. So yes.
Well, it's not exactly required in Islam, but I was wondering also.
I'll be happy to show you afterwards.
Okay, afterwards. If you could talk about, in Islam, there's two sides of jihad. There's the greater jihad and the smaller jihad. Could you explain that for the audience so that we can come to a greater understanding of the meaning of the term jihad in the Islamic word?
Jihad is violence against those who are non-believers. That is the lesser jihad. The greater jihad came out in a hadith. And hadiths, if you're not familiar, if you kind of think of the hadiths are like the Gospels of the Bible. The 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They are the observations of what went on with Jesus. The hadiths are a series of books, of sayings, of quotes, written, by the way, many years after Muhammad's death. But those hadiths began to describe the life of Muhammad and to give the fuller picture. Because if you just looked at the Quran, it only makes up about a third of what Islam is all about. The 5 pillars of Islam, for example, as you probably know, are not found in the Quran. They're found in the hadiths. So, again, from a hadith standpoint, that hadith that talks about the greater jihad has been determined by Islamic scholars. Those hadiths, those major scholars, Bukhari, Al-Muslim, and others, they've ruled that hadith as being not a worthy or highly rated, because they rated the hadiths. It was not a highly believable hadith. So the greater jihad is the greater jihad is what Muslims today will talk about. CARE talks about that. They want you to focus on that. But the Islamic scholars will tell you, and all the major Islamic schools of thought say jihad, as I talk about the lesser jihad, is one of violence against those. And there's jihad of the pen, jihad of the...
Well, for primarily defensive purposes, though, if you go...
Define defensive. That again begins...
Flight from Medina.
Right. Anyway, we'll let someone else ask another...
One more question. Are you aware of the verse in the Quran that says, there shall be no compulsion in religion? In the Quran, it's written that you shall not impose your religion on others. So we're talking about, you're using a lot of...
and do you know when that was said?
Well, can I...
No, do you know, let me just ask you, since you asked me, do you know when that was said? Was that said in the Meccan phase or the Medina phase? Where they lived in Medina or Mecca? You don't know. I can tell you, it was said in the Meccan. And when there are verses that abrogate, if you don't know what abrogation means that what was said before has now been replaced by something better. So that verse, while it is true, it is in the Quran, other verses later that were violent superseded and now replaced those. Didn't cancel it, and you will continue to see that quote used oftentimes by the apologists to say, well, see, this is the peaceful Islam. This is what's okay. Well, in reality, that's true, but something later came in and replaced that. And that's what an Islamist won't tell you, and they are always taking the latter verses as the verses that are to be applied. Now, there are some Muslims who don't believe that concept. Well, that's great. But Islamic scholars say that is a requirement. There's not an option to not do that. So, thank you for your question. I appreciate you coming out tonight.
So mine's a simple operational question.
Pardon me?
Mine's a simple operational question. Are these classes online or do you have to go somewhere?
The classes for, oh yeah, they're all online. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. We do this by the phone. We do conference calls. We do video conference calls. We give you YouTube materials to review. And then we do the mock review. You sit at your home, read the material online, and then you complete the template that we have. So absolutely.
But you interview the people.
Oh yeah, I do interview everybody. We go out and have a, I have a phone conversation with folks and just to kind of find out what their interests are. Yes, ma'am.
When Brigitte was here before, unless I misunderstood, they told us how to teach people about Islam, is to start with if a Muslim believes in Sharia law. Sharia law goes against our Constitution,
right.
Goes against the laws of our land. It's being practiced in 20 states in this country. It goes against everything we as Americans and Christians have been taught. If they believe in the Quran, and that makes them Islam. They are not peaceful people. They want to convert us, or they want to kill us.
Right.
And there's another thing.
Not all Muslims want to kill you. So let's just make that. And there are many peaceful Muslims out there, but the doctrine says exactly what you just said. That's correct.
Sharia law is not something that I want to follow or want any part of my family to follow.
Exactly.
And it's being accepted in this country, and I don't think a lot of people understand that.
Well, just like the hijab, they don't understand that that's being Sharia compliant.
Muslim children are praying in our public schools,
right.
But our Christian kids can't. And the people aren't standing up and saying, we want freedom of speech and religion for everybody.
Well,
why are we not doing that?
Well, that's why Act for America is here, and we hope tonight, just another classic example about religion in the schools. People talk about when they want it to, religion should be out of the schools. We shouldn't have prayer. Well, if that's the case, why is the Catholic Charities receiving 94% of their money from the federal government to fund refugee resettlement? Are they not religious when they're doing that, and they're only religious on Sundays? But yet we give them $2.0 billion since 2008 to 2013. So I'll give you the quick number that I do for refugee resettlement just to give you an idea. And I'm a Christian, and churches around the world have been doing this for years. What number is larger, 4 or 64? Trick question. Okay.
I have one more
let me
thing,
finish.
and then I'll leave.
Okay. I'll
I
leave you with that
recently
teaser.
found out we have 2 gas stations in the Flathead that are owned by Muslims.
Right.
I found out all the gas stations in Colorado are owned by Muslims. All the gas stations in Kansas are owned by Muslims. Why?
Well, I would challenge your statement that all gas stations in Colorado or all gas stations in Kansas. I don't know that for a fact, but I would find it odd. Now, whether there's a large majority of, and we just have to be careful about talking about generalities, because if we want to be considered serious, we couldn't speak in generalities, and we need to be specific. But what I talk about refugee resettlement, 4 is less than 64, but it takes $265,000 over a course of 5 years to provide services to a family of 4 refugees here in the United States. Oh, by the way, veterans who are coming back from Iraq or Afghanistan are not getting $265,000 over a 5-year period. 64 is how many families can be served, or how many refugees can be served in their home country or in that world if we take $250,000 and provide them services, protection, food, and clothing over there. We have churches for years have gone to other countries and built orphanages. They don't bring those children here and build an orphanage. I'm working with a group that's building an orphanage down in Colombia. $7,000 to build a 50-bed orphanage for girls. You try to do that here in the United States, it costs us $7 million. So why are we bringing people here to spend that kind of money when that money could be far more effective over there? That's another sidebar, but go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Colonel, for your time, and may God bless you for your efforts.
Thanks.
All right, do I need it on? It's pretty loud. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you now.
All right, I love to empower courage, and unfortunately in my line of work, I get to battle the bullies on the left often. So I developed a quiver full of arrows, and so I see folks taking notes, so I want to help you guys out. Here's one thing, right now, when they call you a xenophobe, that means you're afraid of the outside or the unknown. We'll call them an oikophobe, which means fear and loathing of the known or the familiar, which is what they're destroying. Can't argue that fact. Second thing is, when someone says, well, where do you have the authority to stand here and tell this school board what's right? You say, oh, wait a minute, I got a document right here, and you pull out your Constitution. You say, here's my verification. I'm one of these guys, the first 3 lines, we the people. That takes away their argument right away. And I really pray that you folks have the courage to stand against these bullies. There's bullies in the left, there's bullies in the Islamic world. If we can stand together with courage, we can fight this and win.
Yep.
And so I really want to give you that. And last but not least, the school boards here in our county really need a lot of work. And we don't have to change the presidency, although that's critical. What we have to change is local. And so get involved locally. There's not enough folks on the ground getting involved locally. Our school district 5 has got some really bad players on it. As one of the speakers just previously mentioned, those folks need to be recycled out of there and/or their positions put in front of all of us to study.
Right.
So thank you, sir. Thank you, Caroline. Excellent job. God bless America.
Wrap it up. So my apologies for those who don't make it. I'll be around afterwards, so if you want to ask any questions afterwards. Go ahead, sir. Thanks for coming tonight.
It's going to be kind of hard to follow that. Just a couple of comments. One, a few years back, a lady in our valley started a training for teachers called God in the Classroom. And it was very effective. There were a lot of our local school teachers that went to that conference and learned about their rights as far as teaching God in the classroom. Now, you can't teach your religion in there, but you can talk God in the classroom, and I'd like to see that revised again, that conference. I feel it was very effective. There's a lot of Christian teachers in our valley. Second, school boards don't have all the answers when it comes to curriculum and textbooks. Oftentimes, they get their information from their administrators. So contact your administrators and find out what's going on there, and you can have a lot of influence that way. Granted, the school board makes the final decision as to which book is accepted.
Do you have a question?
I do not have a question.
Okay. I'm sorry, I got to cut this off. We got a couple more things. Clarice, I'm sorry. Last question. So, a couple things I want to go over, ladies and gentlemen. Roy White. Give us some round of applause.